Hello and welcome to American Amnesia. I'm your host, Cliff Garner. And one of the things that rather bothers me about what we're seeing a lot in the news lately is to the extent which the deep state seems to be getting to our President Trump. Now, there are certain aspects of it that could be explained otherwise, but this whole thing with WikiLeaks really does rather reek. WikiLeaks was very responsible for reporting what little negative news was reported about Hillary Clinton through the whole election cycle. And it also has revealed a lot of the bad things that have been covered up by the mainstream media on former President Obama. So with Trump now talking about prosecuting Julian Assange because he's trying to stop the leaks is really it's disturbing to consider. The fact is that the mainstream media has been derelict in its duties, and mostly because of its fawning approach to both Obama and to Hillary Clinton, and their extreme attack on Trump. This is in many respects, a 180. And it's one that should be cause for concern, especially considering the fact that as he was leaving, President Obama nearly got us to war with Russia, even as our new president was taking a seat. That should give us pause. Then the fact that there was all this stuff over Syria and the missile attack that President Trump did received the accolades it did, which is really kind of alarming. Consider he got praise for that from a lot of places that we should wonder why they would praise him, and the same goes with North Korea, and now that's kind of, I think, kind of like Syria. It's kind of, I don't know. It strikes me as Machiavellian at some level. And whether Trump plays multi-level chess or not is a good question, but I'm beginning to wonder if maybe he does. But this whole Assange thing, I'm bothered by it because, for one thing, I support whistleblowers. I think they perform a very necessary service in a society that surrounds itself with so much secrecy, such as ours does. And I believe that Assange has done just that. That he has performed a very valuable provision of a need that we otherwise would not be getting. And it's not been just with America, but also with Turkey and several other countries that really have been operating at a level of secrecy that's just really alarming. The West should not be doing that the way it has. We've lost our high ground because of that. But having somebody like Assange who reveals the truth, kind of knocks the stuffing out of a lot of the actual conspiracy theories that get kicked around. And that's part of the issue. You see, the governments use conspiracy theories. They do conspiracies. There's conspiracies of all kinds going on at all times, in all kinds of places, for all kinds of reasons. But there are people within our government who have been conspiring to shield us from something, for our own good, of course. And when people rip that veil away and show us what's really going on, they are providing a function that is very necessary to us. We need to be informed, maybe not about every little thing that happens at all times. You know, mind you, there's things the government should be secretive about. And when they're attacking the enemy, I can see that. You know, we do have enemies. We have people that are working against us all the time. And by every measure we can give, the people in ISIS are not our friends. That's not saying that there are Muslims who are bad or good. I mean, there's plenty of good Muslims. I know a lot of them. That's not the issue. And by not confronting what ISIS is, just by virtue of who they say they are and who they prove themselves to be by their actions, by those virtues, there is nothing we can call them outside of radical Islamists. That is it. They represent a stream of thought that has not disappeared inside Islamic thought from the beginning. We can argue that they are doing exactly what Muhammad did. So, by not addressing that, like Obama did, he's not doing us a favor. He's muddying the waters. And when somebody's yelling Allahu Akbar as they're killing people, they believe that they are fulfilling what Muhammad said to do. Now, we can argue the truth of that to the day we drop. We really could. The fact is that there is a strain in Islam that's been there like that from the beginning. There has been a strain in Christianity that has been oppressive as well. Okay, we can see that. There is that streak in religion that there are people who will use religion to gain political or monetary or other types of power and influence. There's no question about that. But they also use other things as well, including politics. Oh. So, you know, with all the nonsensical stuff that we can attach to all this, you know, let's brush that aside and just look at the fact of it. So, dealing with ISIS clearly is something that our president should be doing. And it seems to be that he is doing that. Now, I'd like to find out from people exactly what's going on the ground over there. I don't have quite the means to keep up on that as well as I did while I was living in Turkey. But at the same time, I haven't heard much of anything too. So I mean, it's just there's just been kind of a dearth of information right now. But the fact is that Assad has been fighting them. Russia has been fighting them. We claim to be fighting them. Turkey says they're fighting them, which remains to be seen. But I've seen that Obama didn't really do much when he was there. He was actually getting into some scuffles with the Turks over the Kurds, and that alone is rather significant because of the recent power grab that Mr. Erdogan has performed, in which he has named himself the sole repository of power in Turkey. This has been coming a long time, and there's no question that what he is actually doing is becoming a tyrant, a dictator. That's what it is. I mean, if he can remove everybody or anybody at any time for any reason, and the only reason he would ever have is the one that he has always had, is that they don't say or do what he wants them to do, that means he is a dictator. Get over it, people. That's what he is. And if you want to bury your head in the sand, don't cry to me about it. And don't try to tell me that I don't know what I'm talking about, because I do. You can go ahead and fool yourself. But a dictator is a person that has absolute power. That's it. That is definition. Quit being stupid. Propping Erdogan up is not the end-all or be-all of what our government should be involved in. I am very concerned about the connection that had between Michael Flynn and Erdogan, who was paying him directly. And now you have Zarab, who is the Iranian connection for laundering money between Turkey and Iran. He was Erdogan's boy. Daddy, what do we do with all the money in the shoe boxes? Well, that was his son. But Zarab was the one that actually made the deal go through and laundered the money on the gold market and caused the tank in the gold market in 2013. If you remember that happening in December 2013, you can thank Mr. Zarab to remind our government that that's the reason why we're prosecuting him. And tell Rudy Giuliani that he should probably give the money back to Erdogan. I'm very unhappy with Mr. Giuliani. I have had a very high regard for him for a long time, and for him to take the money now and back Zarab, I think is shameful. He should give it back. So this deep state stuff, it is manifested in a lot of opposition to President Trump, but now all of a sudden it seems to be springing up on his side. Now, I don't know if he's out on top or if they are. I can see there being compromises done. When Erdogan struggled with the deep state in Turkey, he had worked with the Gulen group for a long time. I'm going to get into the whole Gulen thing a lot deeper in the very near future. I've been asked to do so, and I shall. But I'm going to mention a couple things that I'll probably come back to as well. But throughout the time in which the two of them were cooperating, you had Gulen filling positions in the police and in the prosecution prosecutorial offices across Turkey, and also in the judicial branch. And that you were seeing a lot of the justices and the judges and the prosecutors and the police chiefs and things of this nature that were coming through the Gülen group. They were schooled in the philosophy underlying hizmet, service. And see, this is part of the problem that is involved with what Erdogan's trying to do against Gülen, is that it really resembles in no small way the problem that China has had with what are they called? Oh, that what is that religious group? Falun Gong, and they are both deeply connected with very deep cultural currents within their societies, respective societies. The Sufism and the concept of selfless service in Islam that comes from really from Rumi and the Sufist ideals are very deep in Turkey, and not only in Turkey, but all through certain sections of the Middle East and Central Asia. Really, more Central Asia than the Middle East. You see far less of the Sufist ideal, and far more of the legalist ideals of the Saudis. That comes through a lot more in the Middle East. Now, there's varying degrees of this, and there's a lot of struggle between the two philosophical poles there. In fact, and others too. But between those two in particular, there's a lot of conflict, and it gets down to certain questions with the legalistic stream that has been really more prevalent in Arab societies tends to be very severe. Whereas when you get further away from the Wahhabist renaissance of these very strict ideas, the more you approach the beliefs and really the softening effects of Sufism, and that I think is actually quite significant. You see it in certain areas that they're far more liberal in approach, and this is partly because Sufism has been so influenced by the Shiite wing of the faith, and that there's a more of a how would you say it? I don't want to say liberal, but to a certain extent it is, because it is more relaxed and actually more accepting of human foibles. But at the same time, that does give a kind of a wrong impression, actually. Because really, there's no way of getting around it. Islam tends to be very, very, very legalistic. You would have to go to more of a Judaizing tendency that is not as strong in Christianity as it is in Islam. In fact, Islam probably is kind of taking Christianity back into a Judaizing type strictness of the law as a faith to begin with. So there is that tendency at any rate. But when you talk about the Wahhabist and even with certain of the Pakistani threads of Islam that were influenced by Wahhabism in the 1910s and 20s and 40s and 50s too, that set up a lot of the madrasas that became what is now the Taliban. This strain is counter to a more tolerant, I suppose would be a good word, strain that comes from more of the Sufist ideas. So this tendency within what Mr. Gulen was driving towards, I think was not exactly what Mr. Erdogan had in mind. Erdogan, I think, was looking more at a not necessarily as strict as the Wahhabists, but he was definitely looking at more of a hard-nosed political, and probably even at some level a very cynical form of Islam that he was personally idealizing and thinking would be the powerful persuasion, I guess, to the generation that he was hoping to rise up. Whereas I think with Gulen, you're looking at more of a tolerant and coming a version that's coming at an angle of interfaith dialogue. I think I do believe that that's really kind of where the fissures were cracking. Pretty much from the beginning. They managed to put together a coalition of themselves and others. I mean, there were other minds and threads of thought that were coming together under their banner, the AKP. But they were, I think, the two, when you get down to it, the two most important groups or leaders of groups of people that came together to form the party. And with the prosecutors and the judges and the police that had been influenced by Gulen in particular. Now, education was another issue, and there were some other things too. But when we look at those particular people as being under, I wouldn't say Gulen's control, but under his influence in a very strong way, into which that they were influencing beyond, they were punching beyond their strength. Okay, and so they were able to influence their sphere of activity at a heightened a level. And at the time that was going on, that they were occupying those positions, what Erdogan was doing was he was prosecuting a large number of people. He was funneling them into the judicial system for prosecution as conspirators in the various coups that had occurred in Turkey in the 70s and 80s and 90s. And even a couple that were supposed to have happened in the 2000s. That is what he was doing. And he was removing people from really everywhere. Educators, professors, and of course Gulen was shoving his people into place. And not only that, they were buying up universities. They were really becoming a very important section of the colleges. And they don't call them colleges over there. All colleges are universities. Colleges in Turkey are actually glorified high schools. But that's neither here nor there. The universities that the religious universities were mostly under the control of the Gulen Group. And what had happened is that a lot of the people that were being weeded out, a lot of the secularists, were being prosecuted under various laws pertaining to certain prosecutions that had been ongoing. There are two that were in particular, and they were both related to one another. One of them was called the Erdogan case, and this was huge. I mean, truly huge in Turkey. And if you look at it, Erdogan is the root from which the next one would come out, and it was called the Balyols. I think I'm saying that right. Which is sledgehammer. And if I'm getting Balyols wrong, I know that sledgehammer is right. And Erdogan goes back, on one hand, to Turkish folklore and myth, and the story of the gray wolf that leads the Turkish people, the survivors of the Turks, into the mountains to hide away from the Ilkhan who's destroying them, is part of the consciousness of the Turkic people. And the people that were involved in this, the professors, the journalists, the business people, the military people, the police, the MIT, you name it. They were all conspirators to preserve the Republic. This goes back to Ataturk and his founding of the Turkish Republic. This idea of the need to preserve the Republic, the secular republic, against fanaticism, and in particular, religious fanaticism. When Ataturk took over, he eliminated the last of the Ottoman emperors, and they were sultans, or you could even call them caliphs, caliph, whatever you want to say. He removed the last one and ended the empire. He established the republic in the face of resistance from all over the world, and he fought and maintained it. The man was remarkable, any way you want to cut it. Ataturk was a remarkable man. He did things wrong, he did things right, but he was very remarkable. And there's no getting around that. And he established the Republic, and he established it with really having certain people stepping up to make sure that it would be preserved against any reaction. His ideal was he was looking at France more than he was America, at least at the beginning, as the ideal of Western values. I think he started seeing America in a more positive light, especially with education and things. He brought John Dewey to Turkey and helped establish the public education system through Dewey. He like I say, I think he was changing from France to America. But I think he held both America and France in extremely high regard. And I think he wanted to emulate both countries to no small extent. But at any rate, the Ergenekon thing goes back to that time. On the other hand, on one hand, like I say, it's part of the deepest roots of Turkish folklore and mythology. On the other hand, it goes back to the establishment of the empire, or the establishment of the republic. And from the establishment of the republic and after the Second World War, Ataturk died between the two wars. His replacements stayed neutral. They were kind of leaning more towards the Germans, but there were a lot of reasons for that. But they stayed neutral, and this neutrality was a very important part of Turkey's vision of itself after World War II. That Turkey was able to maintain to some extent a good neighbor policy even before Erdogan. There was always a leaning towards the West. This is keeping with Ataturk, right? That's why they joined NATO. But they fought with Greece. That went down anyway. But they did join NATO. They have at times been a very good ally to the United States. And Erdogan tried to bring Turkey in the Gulf War. He actually had a very good relationship with George Bush. Now, when Obama came in, that relationship was kind of a little screwy. There was a deal made right before the beginning of the Arab Spring, in which Erdogan involved himself and meddled in the affairs of his neighbors. This was something that he wasn't doing. He wasn't doing that. The only one he meddled with would have been Iraq, and he was involved in it because of the Kurds. And his deeper involvement came after the Arab Spring, and he's actually gotten. It's almost like he can't leave his hands off of the northern part of Iraq. And I have the feeling that a lot of what ISIS has done in Iraq, particularly around the Mosul area, has been a lot of his doing. So, at any rate, I've gotten way off the track. The thing is that when Erdogan confronted the deep state, he originally was working with Gülen, and he was confronting these generals, and he was confronting these other people that were in place over what we call Ergenekon. Ergenekon is wrapped up further as a third kind of a wheel here in what we would call Project Gladio. Project Gladio. And this was the post-World War II doctrine taken by actually by the OSS during the war, which is the predecessor to the CIA. That what they were doing was they were setting up in the Ukraine and the Balkans, in Turkey and Italy, and other places. But in those in particular, they were leaving behind caches of arms and money, communications equipment, all kinds of stuff. And they were also given a certain amount of secret support to fight against communism, really. And that's really where it all started. So if you look at Turkish history after World War II, you see that this Project Gladio really grew in really wild ways. It did in Italy also, where you had a lot of right-wing, basically terror groups in Italy. That they blew up the Bologna train station. They were involved in all kinds of stuff. There was a fellow named Stefano della Chiaie, who was really a close associate of Otto Skorzeny, the SS stormtrooper who became actually was sent to Egypt by the U.S., by the way, to train the Egyptian forces. And while he was there, he created the Palestinian militias that became the PLO. And at any rate, Della Chiaie was involved in Gladio in the Italian branch. But in the Turkish branch, what had happened is that there'd been fighting from all through time between the Grey Wolves, who were the nationalists, who were largely armed to fight against communist militias, and this had lasted all through the time of the Republic after World War II, right through the 70s and 80s, and this is where Muhammad Ali Agha. And that's how that AGCA is pronounced in Turkish, Agha. And stress on the first one. But at any rate, he was one of the leaders one of the main guys within the Grey Wolves in the 70s, and he was he was a hitman, and he was the one that was sent to assassinate. Sent by the Russians and the Bulgarians to assassinate John Paul I. And that just really bizarre connections here, but it does tell you something about what non-alignment can imply at times. And not only that, there's a certain amount of fanaticism within the nationalist underground that was going on in the 70s and 80s and 90s even, that had a religious overtone that we don't really hear so much about, because basically the leadership of the MHP, the MHP, was not only secular, but they were also Kemalist. They were supporting the ideals of Ataturk, supposedly. But a lot of the rank and file, actually, within their group has been very stridently Islamist, which is something that's kind of a dirty secret, really. They're the ones that were pressing for restoring Hagia Sophia, if you follow the Greek pronunciation, or the old Greek pronunciation, Hagia Sophia, the great cathedral turned into mosque, turned into museum, and they want to reestablish it as a mosque. They were the ones that were pushing for it, but now you got a lot of the AKP that is as well, and this is where those two have come together. There's a reason for that. So with all this stuff that was going on, right, and all these groups that were established, they were fighting against Erdogan at first, but somewhere in this Balio's or the steam hammer prosecutions, around the time they put General Bashbu, into prison, things began to change. MIT all of a sudden was making deals with Erdogan, and it was coming out very publicly in the papers. And the whole tone of the deep state changed. Now, this change within the deep state, and I'll come back to what the deep state is in a second, but this tone represented a change, a sea change in the running of Turkey. And the fervor with which the Gülen group was going after the army and elements of the army suddenly became a burden to Erdogan. And when I go back and I show the relationship between the two of them in more detail, there's some facts I want to pick up before I do that. But the thing about that relationship is that it came apart over a handful of issues. And one of the issues for Gülen was the approach to Israel, in which his plan was to maintain this interfaith dialogue. Erdogan is and has been pursuing an anti-Israeli agenda. Now, he worked with them economically as long as it's expedient for him. But he will betray them in a heartbeat, just like he did the Kurds. And as a matter of fact, I think he sees the Kurds and the Jews in a similar way. Just like they see themselves, the Kurds see themselves as much like the Jews. And I think the Jews have a lot of sympathies with the Kurds for the same reason. And incidentally, the Kurds, I believe, are the Medes from the Bible. They're cousins of the Persians, but they are a separate people. And their language is different. Their culture is a little different. So, these are some of the strains going on here. But that was a big one there for the two of them. They really publicly parted ways on that. Then the second one that's obvious to everybody involves the prosecutors pressing charges against Erdogan and his associates for corruption. And for Gülen, the reason there is moral. It's religiously moral. For Erdogan, well, it's personal stake. He's making the money. He's not giving it back. And like Hillary Clinton, he was talking out of the other side of his mouth while he was trying to shut up the people exposing him and his crimes. Very similar. Very, very, very similar. Almost identical. As a matter of fact, he was running for his life. Now, the deep state saved Hillary so far. They might give her to the wolves yet. In fact, I think they will. I think that things are coming to where they're going to have to give somebody to the wolves, and they're not going to give up Obama. Think about it. So, at any rate, the third point. and this is, I think, really where the rubber met the road, and I think it was really the kicker, was that the prosecution of the steam hammer prosecutions had gone so far that it was demoralizing the military. And Erdogan's plans, especially if he were getting the support from MIT now, which he was to expand and use the military like no one has done since the inception of the Republic. The last person to use the military in this way would have been Ataturk himself. And I think that he has plans, because what Ataturk did was he reduced Turkey to borders that were at first maybe a little too small, but he gave him a bargaining position. He got the Republic of Hatay to rejoin the Turkish Confederation, and this time under the auspices of the Republic by plebiscite in the I think it was the 1930s. I'd have to look it up for sure, but that was in between the two wars. The Republic of Hatay was a small country between Turkey and Syria that still is populated mostly by Turks and Arabs, but also a large number of Kurds and Armenians and Assyrian Christians, among others. And that this small republic was portrayed in Indiana Jones in the Final Crusade. It was the city of Antioch, Antakya in Turkish, was at one time called Hatay, and that's named after the Hittites. That area was Neo-Hittite kingdoms that survived the destruction of the greater Hittite Empire and were later devoured by the Assyrian kingdom, the Neo-Assyrian kingdom that would arise and would take the northern part of Israel into captivity. This goes back to Bible times. That republic there would end up expanding the borders, but it would pretty much settle at that. I don't think there was any other. There might have been a couple other smaller adjustments, but basically what Ataturk did is he reduced the size of the empire to the size of modern Turkey. Erdogan has in mind expanding the borders considerably and reconstituting the Ottoman Empire. He's reviving the Ottoman Empire. That is what he is doing. I don't know, and I'd have to look into it a little bit more, and that's part of what I'm looking for right now before I do a full program on it. But I don't know that Mr. Gulen was ever on board with this neo-Ottoman concept. I don't think that he was exactly against it, but I don't think that he was looking in terms of empire, whereas Erdogan is, and he's breaking up Serbia right now so that basically he can overrun that. He's also talking about seizing the islands and probably some European sections of Greece. And don't be surprised if he pulls something on Bulgaria soon. But or anybody else in the Balkans for that matter. I do know that the Saudis are a little bit afraid of him, and that they were very quick to tell Erdogan that they really didn't need his help in Yemen. That's why we're there. And I don't have as much problem there because it's not the quagmire that Syria could become. Anytime you're dealing with Russia directly at arms, I think you have to reconsider the idea that's just really playing with fire, and I don't like that idea at all. And the false flag that was possibly done, and I think it probably was, to get us to shoot those missiles at Assad. I find that very disturbing. I find Erdogan's voice in a lot of that. We should be aware of that. So, what I'm saying is this. It was very clear when the deep state basically capitulated to Erdogan. It is not clear to me what is transpiring between the deep state and the Trump administration. I think the Democrats are pretty worried, no matter what it is. I think I think they're kind of in panic mode right now. They have been, but I think they're going even further, and I think that there's large elements within the mainstream media that are looking at maybe facing their own demise real soon here. And I think there are other elements within that mainstream media that are actually taking advantage of the situation and trying to get Assange removed and put away in prison. Let's keep an eye on this. But what I'm seeing is not entirely encouraging, and I'm very worried about what I'm watching. Until next time.